Okay, so we just went through how Richard Nixon, the first of the 5 Republican presidents since World War II, or the second of the 5, the first illegitimately elected of the 4 illegitimately elected president. Richard Nixon stole the election in 1968. He, of course, had to resign. Jerry Ford became president. He was never elected, so it kind of doesn't matter. Then you had, coming out of the Carter presidency, coming out of the Ford presidency, we had Jimmy Carter, legitimately elected. And after the Carter presidency, we had Ronald Reagan running for office. And this is where it gets really interesting. In fact, let me get into this, and then, we'll talk about George W. Bush, I guess, the next segment. Clip number 1. This is, well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself here. And I really, I want to move right to the new stuff. Here's what happened. Bonnie Sauter. Bonnie Sauter was that's his last name, was the candidate for president of Iran. And, there we are. And he was, when the movie Argo came out, the movie Argo basically portrays the Iranian people as bloodthirsty, we want the hostages, all this kind of stuff. And so Bonnie Sauter comes out, and here's what he wrote for the Christian Science Monitor. He says, Ayatollah Khomeini and Ronald Reagan had organized a clandestine negotiation known as the October Surprise, which prevented the attempts by myself and then U.S. President Jimmy Carter to free the hostages before the 1980 U.S. presidential election took place. The fact that they were not released tipped the results of the election in favor of Reagan. Okay, this is the president of Iran. He says, I openly opposed the hostage-taking throughout the election campaign, telling students that occupying an embassy in the heart of Tehran was a sign of cowardice rather than courage. I won the election with over 70% of the vote, in part on that platform. Other candidates were also openly against hostage-taking, and overall 96% of the votes in that election, it was the election of 1980 in Iran, while the hostages were being held. 96% of votes in that election were given to candidates who were against it, who were against the hostage-taking. But the Reagan campaign, specifically Bill Casey, the chairman of the Reagan campaign, the guy that Reagan rewarded by making him head of the CIA, Bill Casey cut a deal with the Ayatollah as the president of Iran at that time, just, wrote last week for the Christian Science Monitor, cut a deal with the Ayatollah to hold the hostages. Here's Ted Koppel talking about the crisis. I mean, this killed the Carter presidency. Here's Ted Koppel back in 1980.
For Jimmy Carter, day 444 begins just as the last 2 days have begun. Without sleep, exhausted, surrounded by aides in the Oval Office, President Carter is desperately trying to salvage this symbolic victory for his administration, to free the 52 American hostages before Ronald Reagan takes the oath of office at noon.
January, whatever it was, the inauguration day in January of 1981. Here's Ted Koppel as, Jimmy Carter is about to go up and say, at the State of the, or not the State of the Union, at the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. Here it is.
Reports of the hostage release are flying fast and furiously now. With Ronald Reagan's oath of office now only 30 minutes away, Jimmy Carter, on his way to the inaugural podium, is questioned by Sam Donaldson.
Mr. President, are the hostages out?
Can't say yet.
Not yet, Sam. Not yet. Is that what he said, Frank? I couldn't hear it.
Not yet.
Not yet. They've cheated him. They've cheated him right down to the end.
They did. They cheated him right down to the end. And here's Ted Koppel as the hostages were freed as they were getting ready for it. Clip 3.
But at 11:38, some 20 minutes before the oath of office, teletype alarm bells sound all over the world.
What's happening, and this will mean a lot more, I suppose, to journalists out there, UPI has just gone with a flash, which is, in effect, the highest, the most important notification of news that they can give. The last time they did it was with the Kennedy assassination. It's 2 words. It says, hostages freed.
Now, that was just as Reagan was about to take the podium. And here's Frank Reynolds. This is all ABC News, by the way, and tip of the hat to ABC. This is Frank Reynolds reporting on Reagan presidency day 1. This is just moments after Reagan took the oath of office. Of course, the hostages were officially freed the minute that Reagan put his hand on the Bible, which was the Iranians' way of saying, hey, we kept your deal. Now send us the weapons that you promised, which is what became the Iran-Contra scandal. Here's Frank Reynolds.
Now, day 1. Day 1 of Ronald Reagan's presidency, and day 1 of freedom for 52 Americans. Though thousands of miles apart, these 2 historic events moved almost on parallel tracks today. The new president had not been in office an hour when the former hostages became free men and women again.
There you go. And Jimmy Carter, his fate was sealed. Bill Casey must have been feeling very, very, in the catbird seat. He had cut a deal, just like Nixon cut a deal with the South Vietnamese, to extend the war in Vietnam so that Hubert Humphrey wouldn't become president. Just like that, in the exact same way. Ronald Reagan's guy, Bill Casey, his campaign manager, cut a deal with the Ayatollah. As the president of Iran is now stating out loud to hold those hostages for those 444 days, even though 96% of the people of Iran didn't want it that way, which is why he's saying the movie Argo was highly inaccurate. Cut a deal with the Ayatollah to hold the hostages until Reagan was released in exchange for weapons, because they had a military that was all American hardware. We'd given it to the Shah. They needed spare parts.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
So basically, since Eisenhower, we all know about, Bush and the Supreme Court. Since Eisenhower, there has not been a legitimate Republican president.